So I'd like to start because today is a very important day. It's National Engineering Day. I kind of wanted to find out from the crowd, have you got any engineers in the house? Nice. I like the way you're just as happy as we are, smiles on your faces as you're putting your hands up. So as you might know, those of you who are engineers, your industry isn't the most diverse in the world. Sorry about that. And both of you happen to be in senior positions in industries that are dominated by white men. I wanted to start off by asking you a little bit about your journey and what you've learned coming from underrepresented groups and how that helped shape you professionally. Do you want to start?
I'd love to start. And first of all, yes, apologies, I am very overexcited that it's National Engineering Day. I'm sitting on the stage here with Lila and Natasha at Wired Impact. Does it get better than this? And then I find out that there's an audience full of engineers, so I am pretty much in heaven right now. And National Engineering Day is very much about celebrating the role that engineers play in enabling so many things we take for granted in our lives so that we can attract a new and more diverse generation into engineering. So you're quite right to call us out on our current lack of diversity. So I experienced that at first hand in my appointment as CEO 5 years ago when I was not only the first woman to do the job, the first person from a minority ethnic group to do the job, but also the first person for at least 25 years who wasn't a rear admiral or brigadier. So there are many dimensions of diversity. And genuinely, on a daily basis, I experienced surprise, confusion, shock from people who found out that that's the job that I do. But actually, my sense of coming from an underrepresented group started much, much earlier. I come from a very mixed ethnic background, a very complex kind of cultural landscape. And so I can't remember a time when I wasn't aware of being different. Right. And I think what that did is very, very early on, help me build empathy into my life. So I was always thinking, how do I create a connection between me and someone else to show we've got something in common. I may look different, I may sound different, there might be something that you know is visible that makes me feel different. But there are lots of things that we have in common together. So from my earliest age, I was focused on how do I build a bridge between me and other people. I think that has formed a very strong foundation to my professional career, so I hope that sense of being aware that we don't all see the world from the same perspective has helped me become a more inclusive, more empathetic leader. And I think in the end I found out that I'm happiest being an outsider on the inside and trying to create those connections between the in-groups and the out-groups.
Lila, does that resonate with you?
Oh, so much. And we've had a lot of fun conversations around the topics of both the past and the present, and actually even the future of what this means. So I too am an electrical engineer, and my journey also started off quite similar as a daughter of immigrants in the United States, in the Midwest, which right away I stuck out English as my second language. And so I always grew up kind of as this, I describe it as being kind of the oddball. But I really, I was never the traditional Midwest American in our school. So when I went to Japan as an exchange student in 1986, I was no longer the non-American. I was the American in a city of 40,000 people. I was the only foreigner. And I really stood out, even though I was shorter with dark hair. And it was really such an amazing experience for me, and it really shifted how I looked at things. So when I got into university in engineering, again, in my courses, I was known as the person carrying around the circuit toolkit that was painted, that was purple with like painted designs on it. So I had at that point kind of embraced my otherness. And that really shifted the opportunities that were open to me in my career, because I didn't hesitate leaning in when I was in an unusual position. So I did return back to Japan, by the way, in the 90s, and I went to work on this new technology that nobody had ever heard of, or no one could even imagine. Like, why would you ever want to watch a movie on a computer? Like, it was crazy. But because I had learned how to imagine the impossible, and as a result, I had a seat around the table working on DVD standards. And that really shifted what it meant of watching movies on computers and other devices for the technology industry. And from there, like I was only at that point 27, but I was, no one else had raised their hand and wanted to be in that type of opportunity. So what that has meant throughout my career is that there have been doors open to me that others might not embrace because I can see things from a slightly different perspective. And how it's impacted me as a leader is I was very fortunate in the sponsorship that I received throughout my career. And now, 30 years later, I see it as my role as a leader of how do I shift from being sponsored to sponsoring others and ensuring that there are diverse voices around the table so that we can imagine the impossible and make it into a reality.
It's so interesting looking at some of the things that both of you have said before and how similar some of your experiences have been. Like Lila, you once described yourself as always the oddball. Hayaatun, you once said that you were always aware of being different. You spoke about the opportunities that you took advantage of. How did you leverage that otherness, that being an outsider, to take advantage and advance your career and have a voice in the room? Lila, perhaps you want to start?
Yeah, I think one of the most, there are a few things. One is I've been very fortunate. So sometimes when you raise your hand and you're willing to take a risk that other people aren't willing to, you find that it can actually open the door for interesting mentors and sponsorships, and I've been very fortunate in that way. And I'll never forget, so it kind of bred this aspect of being a risk taker in my career and in my life. And I'll never forget this moment where I was chief of staff at Intel, working for the CEO and chairman, and he sat me down one day and he said, listen, Pathfinders end up with more arrows in their back than in their front because you're clearing the path for others to follow. He said, I want you to continue doing that. But Lila, listen, you've got to stop occasionally. Let me pull out the arrows so you can run further faster. And it was the most empowering moment for me because what he said was like valuing my different approach. And what I've discovered is like now my role is that. My role is to go find great people, create the environment for them to explore, to take risks, to fail, to succeed, to learn, and to move forward, and making sure that I'm pulling out the arrows and also acknowledging and appreciating their work. Because I think it's, especially after COVID, getting everybody back together and trying to unleash some of that creativity again. We're finding that people, everyone's tired. So how do you actually encourage this and support, especially those who are underrepresented, and having a voice and taking the risk and having the opportunity to succeed and to learn.
Yeah, Hayaatun, you were saying how you're obviously not a rear admiral, you're not a man, you're not white. How do you, when you walk into an institution that's so established, how do you make your voice heard and make people respect you and kind of push for change?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some respects, whoever you are, if you're in a leadership role, a lot of it is the same. It's just that, the backdrop, maybe the package I bring was a little bit different. And I spoke about, how empathy was a very important theme for me in my first comments. And I often think, I get so frustrated people talk about empathy as a soft skill. Empathy is a superpower. I mean, if you think about negotiation or you think about how you want to be able to really understand your customers' needs, or you think about how you're going to reduce risk and build resilience, empathy is so, so powerful. And so I think, having that in your back pocket is a really useful thing, almost whatever role you're in. And then, as Lila said, it's very empowering to be given a platform when you are from an underrepresented group, when you are the first person to do that. You get a lot of visibility. And so, the fact that I could, just by doing this job and hopefully doing it well, I can make more change happen just by virtue of how I look and how I sound or whatever it is. And so, if I can be the CEO of the Royal Academy of Engineering and do a decent job, I will have changed perceptions about what someone in a leadership role in engineering looks like. And that, that's quite exciting. There's a flip side, of course, which is, I'm sure you've had this, people who are from the underrepresented groups are often the ones who are looked to fix the diversity and inclusion challenges in an organization. But in a good organization, that isn't what happens. And so I love the empowerment that comes with it. And so if I think about how have I tried to use that in my role, with this extra, permission I got and the extra visibility I had, as a CEO at the Academy to raise awareness and to try and help our community of engineers move faster in addressing its diversity deficit. I think that commitment to empathy and inclusion has hopefully helped me provide that connection between those that are chomping at the bit, that are so frustrated by the slow pace of change, and those who are more fearful or less sure of how we're going to deliver that change. So I hope that, if I look at the Academy now, we have a strategy that has as its two fundamental pillars, sustainable society and inclusive economy. They run through everything we do. And I'm just one small part of that. But I'm very proud of the fact that we've made that change in a way that hasn't been divisive. So I've tried to leverage my personal experience in order to be part of not just achieving that, but achieving it in a way which has brought as many people with us as possible.
That's really good. I mean, it's clear from the topics that we're discussing today, whether it's sustainable energy, impact investment, future of food, that this can only really be addressed if we have diverse and underrepresented communities represented in sort of groups and making decisions and moving forward with projects. How do you think this could be done most effectively, Lila?
Well, I'm very fortunate to be in an organization like Deepmind because I think diversity is something that was embraced from the founders originally, and that shows up just in even how we organize. We have neuroscientists with engineers, computer scientists, ethicists, social scientists, program managers, and everything we do has a very interdisciplinary approach, which I think is quite important in a research organization where you're hoping, our mission is to advance science, solve intelligence to advance science and benefit humanity. And so, if you're thinking about long-term research and the impact, having those diverse voices and functions up front is quite critical to ensure that you're actually achieving that last part of the mission, which is benefiting humanity, because you have more people around the table that represent what the world looks like. So I think my selection of coming into the company was quite important. It was my background and the culture that was there. But then what my job is to really help amplify and operationalize a lot of this. So, for example, being able to be an executive sponsor and create the space for research such as decolonial AI or queer fairness has been really important. We've also have an ethics review committee internally that I helped establish. And there it was ensuring that there were different representatives from all functions of the company. Again, being able to have, not just a bunch of technical folks around the table, but really people that can help evaluate the work relative to our operating principles, how we would like to govern, and thinking about not just the risks, but also what the potential impacts are. And if we don't have the right expertise around the table, which was the case with some of our work around protein folding and in the biology space, we actively sought outside perspectives to bring that in. And it was just a natural part of our work going, well, wait a minute, how are we supposed to have an opinion on this when it's not in our wheelhouse? Mm-hmm. So bringing in over 30 experts and having the conversations and taking the time to do it. It did take time, but the outcome has been phenomenal, and it helped a group of biologists be better prepared to adopt the technology and leverage it for further scientific advancement.
Yeah, I mean, having outside perspective is really valuable, but I suppose we also need to think about the makeup internally of companies' teams, right? I remember something that you said, Hayaatun, a long, long time ago in an interview ages ago, but you said something about how important opportunity is and how people's perceptions of what an engineer looks like is still so important. And you were talking about how, young black men that might have the exact same education as a young white man would be more likely to still be unemployed after they graduate at the 6-month mark, which is something that was really worrying. Do you feel that companies are now taking things more seriously and that they are actually bolstering internally their sort of resources to make them more diverse, so that at the outset, when they're working on projects, you have those diverse voices in the room?
Yes, thanks, Natasha. I really believe passionately that I was asked a question originally that prompted that answer was, which matters more, talent or ambition? I was like, opportunity. Yeah. So, we have progressed. I think the fact that we're sitting on this stage, having this conversation, where we're situating the issues around diversity and inclusion in terms of addressing our shared global challenges, things that we all need. So it's a necessary condition for us making progress on things that affect the future of humanity. That is progress, right? You know, we're taking much more collective ownership. And I have seen, actually, I would say really good progress in business, in companies embracing diversity and inclusion as a business imperative, as you would expect, bearing in mind the evidence base around the benefits that range from talent attraction, motivation, retention, to productivity, to health and safety, to creativity and innovation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that there's perhaps a sort of broader issue here in terms of tackling the sorts of things we've been talking about this morning: sustainability, climate crisis, pandemic response and prevention. And you know, that is recognizing that unless we have a more inclusive approach to the global innovation community, we will not create resilient responses, effective responses to those massive shared societal challenges. And so one of the things that I'm really proud of in terms of things we do at the Academy is working with innovators in sub-Saharan Africa and a range of emerging economies. And what you see is there are certain things that you just can't do unless you are situated in a particular local context. You know, it's back to empathy, understand, you know, user design is a fundamental, user experience and user-centric design is a fundamental component of what good engineering design looks like. And that means you have to be close to the people who you ultimately want to embrace your innovation, utilize it. So if I think about, you know, Africa Prize for Engineering Innovation, and Charlotte Nguesson, who was our first Ivorian winner, our first woman to win the prize, you know, she developed facial recognition technology that was specifically targeted at the African market. And, you know, we know the challenges that lots of AI and facial recognition technology has had around skin tone and the effectiveness for different ethnic groups. So having somebody in sub-Saharan Africa working on that for a local market is very powerful. Yeah. Or think of Nora Magera, our winner this year. She's developed a solar-powered fridge for vaccine transportation and storage. There are loads of different technologies out there, but what she's done is work with the local healthcare community to really understand things like, you know, what's the business model, what's the culture and custom and practice that's going to affect how much people want to use it. And so I think the more that we can embed that inclusive view of who needs to be part of our innovation community, the more we'll all benefit.
It's so interesting when we talk about the dynamic of making the culture of a business more inclusive, because often I get so frustrated when we're talking about sort of social mobility and diversity, because it feels like that diverse person in the room has the responsibility on their shoulders to point out, actually, that might not be the best innovation we've come up with because it seems a little bit, you know, racist, not great, you know, really, really targeted, maybe has huge ethical conundrums associated with it. I wonder, do you feel we've moved on from that sort of culture of saying, you know, we need to get diverse people in the room to correct us when we're doing something that's obviously wrong? Do you feel like things have moved on, Lila?
It depends what room you're in. Actually, I think, you know, there's still so much work to do in this space, right? I mean, we've had this conversation of, and I have 12-year-old twin daughters, and you know, how do I just like even see it in them and their generation and the generations that follow? So, you know, the numbers are still low despite being out of university for several decades. So just thinking about like what is it that a technologist do, or you know, so I do think there's still a lot of work we have to do in terms of the pipeline of talent and having more representation around the table. And at Deepmind, we're doing a lot in trying to ensure a diverse pipeline in AI. But I think in the room, there's still an important question, which is, what are we missing?
Yeah.
If I go back to our protein folding example, we asked that question, like, what could we do to make this more equitable access? And as a result, we worked with a neglected disease initiative to focus on two parasitic diseases in the global south that are not business enough. They're not making enough money for industry to do the research in this space. So we actually put more resources towards trying to enable that organization and those disease research, which we're excited about. But I think that's the role, again, as leaders, or sometimes you don't have to, if you are the underrepresented person in the room, instead of always needing to feel like you have the answer, sometimes the most important thing is just to ask the question to others and hold the room accountable.